This is 302 books. One of the most requested videos is show us your bookshelf. I don't actually own any bookshelves. The floor will have to do. This video, I want to do two things. First, I want to give you a bit of a tour of all the books. You can pause it at any time during this video if you want screenshots and to see everything I've read. Some of these books I have read cover to cover multiple times, and others I've read a few pages, wasn't feeling it, and walked away from. Life's too short to finish every single book you read if you're not feeling it. But the second is I want to break down 7 nonfiction categories, show you the books I've read from them and which ones I'd recommend for you. Let's get into it. The first category is self-improvement. I looked it up before this video. Guess how many self-help books are published every single year? Over 15,000. And maybe you can relate, but I think the reason they're so popular and there's so many published, especially nowadays, is because psychology, just reading that can be really dense. Same with philosophy, same with even spirituality. So having this whole like pop psychology self-improvement wave where they're able to pair some ancient ideas, i.e. Stoicism, Buddhism even, with modern stories, examples, metaphors, very easy to consume. I personally love this category. It inspires a lot of my videos and work I do, and I've learned a ton through pop psychology self-improvement. That said, there are some great ones that I want to mention to you. First up in this whole self-improvement, I guess pop psychology movement, this one's old. It's Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Believe it was written in the 60s, and it's inspired the works of Jim Rohn. Tony Robbins actually gave a quote on the back here, Wayne Dyer. Maxwell Maltz, the short on him and why I recommend it is he was a plastic surgeon, and this was pre like BBLs and lip injections. He was working with like deformities with people, like, oh, I'm so ugly and I have no confidence because my nose is 3 times the normal size, or I have a huge scar through my face, right? So he would do his job, give them an objectively beautiful face and fix their deformities. People thought that that's what they wanted, that, yeah, okay, now I'm gonna be confident. But what he found is that a lot of people got addicted to the plastic surgery because they still didn't accept themselves even after it was done. In short, it's not what you see in the mirror that dictates your confidence, more what you hold in your mind, your vision of yourself. I really should have thought about how I would stack these before I made this video. It's a giant Jenga game where if I pull one, the whole thing falls over. Another book that's fantastic is called The Happiness Hypothesis. This is by Jonathan Haidt, an author who I have several of his books and I really enjoy. This merges modern science with ancient wisdom from Buddhism, Stoicism, and other thought leaders as well. Very palatable, very easy to read, and one I would definitely recommend for you as well. This one is fantastic. It's called The Courage to be Disliked. It's a book that has been talked about a lot over the years, gotten a lot of buzz. I love psychology. Okay, Freud, Carl Jung, depending on how you pronounce it. And there was a third guy in that camp called Alfred Adler. In my opinion, he's very underrated. Freud and Jung thought that everything you are is a collection of your past. So past traumas. If you were attracted to someone at an early age, that dictates who you're attracted to in the future. They didn't say this directly, but nature is essentially more important than nurture. Alfred Adler said, no, I don't agree that we're not drawn from past causes, rather we are drawn towards goals that we ourselves set. So this book explores those concepts and even more, but it's written in a way that is very palatable and easy to digest, not just a psychology textbook. Next category, relationships. No one is taught how to be in a relationship. It's something you have to seek out, learn through lots of failure and heartbreak yourself. That's why I think it's really good to read a few books at least on how to be in a relationship, what makes good ones. And what's funny is like in your 20s, the relationship skill of attracting people and dating and learning how to talk to women, in my case, right? If you're a young guy out there, that's a very different skill than how to be in a long-term successful relationship. And what you have to watch out for is, in my opinion, getting all your relationship advice from the internet and videos, because what I've noticed just in the bubble is it's very quick sound bites. The quickest sound bites are the most inflammatory, and sometimes they don't even help. How to tell if your partner's a gaslighting narcissist who love bombs. Everyone wants to manipulate you. And it's very catchy for views and attention, but I think it's pretty dangerous because it plants in people's minds to look for the worst in people when they're dating. And a lot of that doesn't contribute to a happy, fulfilled relationship. You might self-sabotage a really good person in a relationship, and you might not even get in one because you're so paranoid about getting hurt again. Back on the rails, guys. You know it's good if you got the double copy. This book right here, I read in my 20s, The Way of the Superior Man by David Dieta. I've recommended this a lot on the channel. It doesn't mean superior over others or superior over women even. It means the most superior version of yourself. But this book supports beliefs that I buy into, like how men and women are equal but different, and that if you try to sterilize polarity, that charge of a up, down, male, female, positive, negative, east, west, north, south. They're two sides of the same coin, but you need different sides. So this book is what first opened my eyes to that and how to play in the masculine, feminine energy dynamics. Very well written, short, concise, easy to digest, and I think does a good job explaining a lot of these complex subjects. Classic book, The 5 Love Languages. If you haven't read this book and you're in a relationship, man, this is a game changer. The 5 love languages are just that. There are 5. See if I can do it. Affirmations, physical touch, acts of service, gifts, and quality time. Just like there are multiple languages in the world, there are multiple ways people speak and receive love. Once you know yours and once you know your partner's, you understand each other much better, and then you're able to speak their love language and get across to them how to communicate that you care. So good book. Concept has definitely stuck with me a decade plus later. If you do plan on getting married one day, I think this book does a good job going over 7 principles of making marriage work. It's written by John Gottman, who has a lot of great research on relationships, long-term, happy couples. Because let me ask you a question. If you want to get healthy, do you study sick people? No, you would study healthy people. If you want to get rich, do you study poverty? No, you study people who have done it. So with relationships, why are you studying the people online who are unhappy, single, talking about how the other sex just wants to manipulate you and use you? When it comes to relationships, you want to learn from people who are happy and successful at it. And these guys have definitely done the work and studied them. So I got a lot of great insights from this, and it was a very interesting read. I'd recommend it. This category is philosophy. It is so much more beneficial going to what I call primary sources instead of secondary or tertiary sources. You may notice that a lot of the new self-help books published in the last 10, 20 years are pretty much just regurgitated Stoicism, Buddhism, old American literature talking about ideals, rewritten, and it's more palatable for the mainstream. The problem is that you have someone's interpretations in a watered down version of what the authors were trying to say. So you'd really hear the real thing if you got it from the source, wouldn't you? Well, in that way, I think that philosophy and old books, old classics, which I'll give you in a minute, are that primary source, and you can interpret it from that. This is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, almost a cliche at this point to recommend it because it's very well known and talked about. This is one of the most recommended books by like hedge fund managers and really, I mean, top of the top success people. They'll recommend this book over and over again. Explains Stoicism very, very well. Sigmund Freud, Civilizations and Discontents. I love this. It's more of a essay instead of a full book. Says that life is very hard, so most people cope in one of 3 ways: distractions, intoxicants, and I forget the third. But we're probably coping with that too. Essential Writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. I love Ralph Waldo Emerson. He is one of my heroes. Didn't necessarily write books, but he wrote a ton of essays, as you can see with this beefcake right here. If you're new to Emerson, would highly recommend this book. It's Self-Reliance. You can get an audio copy as well. It's around 1 or 2 hours, depending on what speed you listen to it. I listen to this every single year. The main idea is that foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. Doing something because that's the way it's always been done. We know in a business is very toxic. You show up to work, you have a better way of doing something, and they tell you this is the way it's always been done. You're like, what? That's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. We do this with ourselves. We're creatures of habits. And most people are operating through life on momentum. An object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon an outside force. You know that principle, don't you? That's what so many people do with their life, and they're kind of just sleepwalking through it. I digress. I won't lecture you. I'll let him do the lecturing. Fantastic book, Self-Reliance. Last one I'll talk about briefly is Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead. I read this in college, and it is on my read list for this year. It's about a young architect who's an innovator, and he's coming up with a lot of resistance on conventional standards, i.e. that's the way it's always been done. So this is a story form that was written in the 40s by Ayn Rand. She also wrote Atlas Shrugged. I can't wait to read this again and get some lessons from it. Got to throw Nietzsche in there. Another one I'm going through again. His ideas are very far out. Favorite quote by him: "The snake that cannot shed its skin must perish," meaning don't be afraid to shed yours. This one's a double tall stack. I can't fit it all onto this stool. Spirituality. I guess you could wrap religion in here as well. Absolutely love reading about spirituality, religion, even ancient civilizations, like everything out there that's pretty woo and hippie, I'm all about. I don't subscribe to particularly one religion, but I think reading old religious texts just to have an understanding of all of them, of the major religions, is a good idea. So we got the Bible right here. Got the Upanishads, very fascinating. Bhagavad Gita, love this book right here. This one's probably the best known of the Indian scriptures. If you haven't read it, it's more of a story based with Arjuna and Krishna, and they're having conversations and lessons on a battlefield. So very different than some other religious texts. Why is it on a battlefield if it's a religious text? I'm not an expert on it, but one of the interpretations is that the more important battle is the one we're all fighting within, between your higher and lower self. And then from Buddhism, we got the Dhammapada. I love Zen Buddhism, although I'm not a practicing Zen Buddhist. Lots of amazing spiritual development in this book for sure. And then some other non-religious but spiritual teachers that have helped me. Always been a big fan of Osho. I did know about the Rolls Royces he had, something like 53. Gifted to him. Man had style. I rest my case. Look at those shades. And if you're new to Osho, I would start with this book on maturity. Most people think that they mature as they grow older, but that's not true, because you can grow in age, but not maturity, and vice versa. So this book explores what it means to grow up, not just grow old. Very funny author as well. On spirituality and woo, being out there, I think Zecharia Sitchin has written some very interesting books about ancient civilizations and alternative explanations, which is a topic I could geek out on. I absolutely love it. Whether it's true or not, I just find it a very curious and fascinating subject. So reading books on that. Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock is another great one as well. Next category, we got biographies. So stories of people that have achieved some sort of success. This is a category I started reading in the last 5 years, and the more I read of it, the more I like it. I honestly wish I would have started reading biographies sooner, because if you know how our brains have evolved, we've not evolved to just memorize facts and logic, which is why memorizing for a test, when you cram, it is so hard to take tests because it's literally just memorization. But we're wired for stories. Most of human history was passed down through oral traditions, and stories or myths, if you know anything about screenwriting, it's, that's what Hollywood is built upon. Even in our last category, spirituality, a lot of those great texts are written in story form, not just for the sake of writing, but because they know, perhaps intuitively, before we had tons of research on it, that that's how you remember things. So one of the best hacks, if you want to remember good lessons and see them in action, is to read biographies. My favorite one that I've read is Steve Jobs. I talked a lot about this last year. Hearing how Steve built the first $1 trillion company and what an innovator he was, and also it didn't gloss over a lot of his shadow side, how he can be overbearing at times, difficult, intense. It felt very honest and not just like sugar-coated. Plus, I'm a huge Apple user and fan as well, so it was fascinating and very interesting to hear how he built Apple and his evolution throughout the years. On that note, Steve was famous for gifting a book the most to friends, family, people who knew him. In fact, at his funeral, when he passed away, there was a copy of this biography in every single person's gift bag. Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda. I gotta be real here, okay? I gotta be honest. I have not read this in its entirety. I think I made it probably 70 pages in before I just stopped reading it for some reason. Life got in the way. So this is one on my list to go through and read this year, because I just hear it's fantastic. It's mind-blowing. It's amazing. Another Walter Isaacson biography on Leonardo da Vinci, who is also one of my heroes. Those are good places to start, in my opinion. Whew, my back is screaming. We got one more category on money and business marketing. Is money important in your life? Absolutely. And I get it. Like, money, when you don't have it, it's really intimidating. Like, I didn't grow up rich. I was in debt for most of my 20s. I lived very humbly. In fact, my first apartment I shared with 2 other people. So there was 3 of us, and it was a 1-bedroom. So we were each paying like $200 a month for. And even now, I live below my means. Could save significantly. And the good news here is you don't have to obsess over finances. In fact, the most important thing is that you just get started. As they say, time in the market beats timing the market. Here's a couple recommendations for you. Psychology of Money. This thing is a fun, non-boring, non-snooze fest, non-data driven, like analytical, you're looking at spreadsheets for 300 pages, view of money, wealth, and finances. Absolutely devoured this book. I'm gonna reread it. This was fantastic and easy to consume. Unshakable by Tony Robbins. I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan, and I think he did an amazing job compiling a very complex subject for the mainstream and the masses. If you don't have any financial experience, you can read this book and probably learn a ton. You know it's good if we got a double copy. This one, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. I've recommended this for years and it still holds up. I give it to a lot of clients when they ask like how to get started with money, if they have money issues, because it's so practical. And he's very funny. It's not a snooze fest finance book like some others. You could read this and be in a totally different financial spot in 10, 20 years. Do not underestimate the power or sell yourself short of, I don't have enough money to invest. Some old school, like 1900s American mindset books on money that I have really enjoyed. 2 of them. The first is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, I believe his name is. Really short book just on that topic. What is the mindset of the wealthy? And The Richest Man in Babylon. This book drilled into me. It's not about the money you make. It is about the money you keep. Especially with business, you'll hear people flexing, oh, we made $200,000 last year, right? But if they only kept 2,000 of it, they really made $2,000. In fact, the person who's working a 9-to-5 that saves 10 is actually richer at the end of the year. So this book tells you that a portion of everything you make is yours to keep. Pay yourself first. If you want to set yourself up this year and make it the best year, you want to reinvent yourself, you want to experience an identity shift in 10 weeks, I'll link down below our program, Metamorphic, where you can get a free coaching call with one of our coaches, and we can hear more about you, see if it's a good fit, see if we can genuinely help you, and tell you a little bit more about how that would come about. What I'll do now is link up right here the 3 best lessons I learned from reading all 300 of these books. As we said, a lot of them can say the same 3 things. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, stop settling, start living. See ya.